And then what happened with the Uluru statement, as you know, was a proposition that there should be in the Constitution a national elected representative assembly, which would be an advisory assembly to the Parliament. This is called the Voice. Now, I don't think, and the Cabinet doesn't think, that that is a good idea. Let me tell you why. Our representative institutions are based on the proposition that all Australians are equal and that every Australian citizen, whether they are a first Australian or whether they were, naturalised last week, is entitled to stand for and vote for, of course, and be elected to. And, of course, there are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices in the Parliament now. I mean, my colleague Ken Wyatt, the member for Hasluck, as you know, is the first Aboriginal to be a minister in an Australian government. I appointed him, and he is an outstanding minister. He was the first Aboriginal man to be elected to the House of Representatives, and sitting opposite him on the Labor side is Linda Burney, the first Aboriginal woman. Now, these are all voices in the Parliament. An assembly of the kind that was proposed would be, in effect, a third chamber of Parliament. And I don't believe our Parliament should have any chambers other than the two that it does, the House and the Senate, and they are open to all Australians.
Michael,
it's very important to speak the truth and say what you honestly feel. I do not believe what would in effect be a third chamber of Parliament available only to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is consistent with our constitutional values.
Mark, I'll just leave it there. We have another question that I do want to go to on this, but just before we go to that question, Prime Minister, you'll be well aware, as many others will be, amongst others, that Noel Pearson said that, in his view, it does not create that third chamber of Parliament at all.
Well, I with respect to Noel, I disagree. If you set up a chamber, an assembly, and you put it in the Constitution, and you say that it is there to advise the Parliament on legislation, then inevitably every piece of legislation will have to go through.
Well, let me go to Teela Reid, because I think Teela has a question on this. Teela Reid.
Prime Minister, with respect to what you say about the voice to Parliament, I was part of the constitutional dialogue process. You gave Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people the space to tell you what we thought meaningful recognition was. We rejected symbolism, and we reached a national consensus for a representative First Nations voice to advise Parliament on the issues that affect our lives. Not a third chamber, and not an advisory council handpicked by you, and not even those MPs that are in Parliament currently.
Well, what's wrong
why
with
why won't you respect our proposal to take it to a referendum and put it to the people like you put the marriage equality to the people? Because polls reveal up to 61% of Australians are in support of this proposal.
Well, Well, I can tell you it would be effectively be a third chamber. And let me explain why. If you set up, say you have this assembly, it's elected by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, how that mode of election is going to be truly representative, there's plenty of issues to work out there, but let's say that was worked out. And it's to advise the Parliament on laws that affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Do you know what that means? That means every law affects Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Every single law that goes through the Parliament, whether it's tax, whether it's defence, whether it's social security, whether it's health, they all affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people because they're part of the Australian community. And that would mean that that assembly would have the right, if it chose, to examine every piece of legislation. It would be, in effect, a third chamber. Now, as to its prospects at a referendum, let me tell you, I honestly, as someone who's had some experience in how easy it is to change the Australian Constitution, it would have no prospect of success whatsoever. And I can tell you that is the view of every member of Parliament that I've discussed this with. And I know there are some who want to kid it along and just, you know, just literally, well, they're basically mislead. People that don't tell you the truth are misleading you. What I'm telling you is the truth, is what I believe, and what I'm very, what I have to be honest with you about this. I don't think it's a good idea, and if it were put up in a referendum, it would go down in flames.
I want to go back to Teela.
That's my view.
We hear that's your view. Teela, do you believe there's some way this would work and not end up being this alternative chamber, as the Prime Minister says?
I think the Prime Minister continues to undermine our democracy, and clearly the point of the Uluru statement was that we put the voice to Parliament and the makeup of that voice to Parliament in the Parliament's hands. The Prime Minister can honestly not sit there and say it will fail. If that's his position, then we clearly need a leader with some courage who's going to take our country entirely, not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but everyone. He's continuously said tonight that this is about mutual respect. In his dismissal of the Uluru statement, clearly showed no respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who participated in those significant dialogues when you look at comparative democracies around the world that have a lot more in their democratic process for the First Nations people. It's been really disheartening to see his dismissal of this.
All right, well,
you might just leave that as a comment.
Well, Teela, let me add one final point. I'm disappointed that you place so little store on the Aboriginal people, members of the Australian Parliament. I was at, well...
It's because they represent their political interests.
Oh.
All right.
Really? So Ken Wyatt, what are you saying about Ken Wyatt and Linda Burney?
I totally
they're
respect their positions in Parliament, but they've both got political positions to make in Parliament. They don't represent the interest of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And who here can honestly sit and say that we have a fair go in the political life of our people? We were from the get-go dismissed from the Constitution entirely. So I really think you're misconceiving this idea.
You now have Aboriginal people in the Parliament, elected to the Parliament, serving there with their fellow Australians. I look forward to there being many more, and to dismiss them as just being, you know, what are you suggesting? They are tokens of
Absolutely
political parties?
not what I'm saying
at all. Please, can I just say this?
We don't have to leave this.
No, hang on. I think it's very important tonight that we respect the Aboriginal members of the House and the Senate. They are there, proud Australians, proud First Australians, and they are there, powerful voices with 60,000 years of history in our Parliament, and I respect them, and I think all Australians should too.
As do I.
All right. Thanks for that, and we'll leave.
Malcom Turnbull, he's speaking in King's Cross. Let's take it.
A little further in the direction of justice by voting yes.
Prime Minister, when... No, former Prime Minister.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very kind.
You Prime Minister, would you have supported it? Yes.
No, well, my government did not support the proposal when it was presented in 2017. And there were two reasons for that. Firstly, we didn't think it could be successful in a referendum, but I think, you know, that was 6 years ago. Lots changed since then. It's definitely winnable. And the second thing was we struggled with the idea of having an office in the Constitution that was the qualifications for which were anything other than Australian citizen. You know, I'm a Republican, right? So that's why I don't like, you know, nothing personal about Charles, but I don't like the British monarchy in Australia because I think all of our institutions should be, you know, held by Australian citizens. But, you know, the Indigenous community have backed this issue in for 6 years. And they have argued, they've said this is what we want for recognition in our Constitution. And if we're talking about recognising Indigenous Australians in our Constitution, we should be listening to the people who are to be recognised. You know, we can all have different views, and lawyers particularly will have all sorts of views. This is what they're seeking. It's not a threat to our Constitution. It's not.
Well, that is Malcolm Turnbull speaking in King's Cross this morning, giving his view, his changing opinion when it comes to the Voice. And it should be noted that not the entire Indigenous community agrees with the Voice campaign at the moment, but that's just a little flavour of what Malcolm Turnbull is getting up to at the moment in King's Cross. He's campaigning with Tanya Plibersek, who we will be speaking to in a little over 20 minutes from now.
The sorrow and soul-searching is underway in the Yes camp after a resounding rejection of the Voice to Parliament referendum. Despite the loss, an emotional Prime Minister has declared it's not the end of the road for reconciliation.
An Indigenous flag flies at half-mast today after more than half the country said no last night.
I'm sad. A lot of work has gone into this.
A night of tears for those who wanted change, forlorn faces at the Yes reception early in the evening, and as the polls closed in the West, the Prime Minister closed the campaign.
While tonight's result is not one that I had hoped for, I absolutely respect the decision of the Australian people.
That decision conclusive and comprehensive. Tonight, the Electoral Commission has the national result at 60.54% to no, 39.46% yes, a margin of more than 2.8 million votes, and with postals still to come, that will likely increase.
They've said no to grievance and the push from activists to suggest that we are a racist country when we are absolutely not a racist country.
This is not the end of reconciliation.
The referendum defeated in every state, almost 7 in 10 Queenslanders voting no, more than 64% in South Australia, 63% in WA, 60% in the Northern Territory, 59% in New South Wales and Tasmania. Victoria was closer, but hardly close. Only the ACT returning a yes majority.
This is the referendum that Australia did not need to have.
The opposition leader victorious last night, but today a feeling of solace over celebration.
I feel a sense of relief for the country because I think we would have changed as a country and not for the better.
Corporate partners, premiers, prime ministers, celebrities and song. All upstaged by millions in the suburbs and the regions.
And we were not able to reach you and cut through what has been the single largest misinformation campaign that this country has ever seen.
No referendum has ever succeeded without bipartisan support, and no one had a larger impact than Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price.
We have to step away from grievance. Attempting to bring about change through grievance has evidently got us nowhere.
At a pub in Hobart, they watched and wondered what now.
The same issues are still here today as what was yesterday, and they'll be still here on Monday. Education, health, all these issues.
The first thing we have to do now, we need to come together in unity.
From the government's point of view, obviously, that is now our focus. The Australian people have asked us to do this in a different way. We hear that and we'll do that.
And finding that different way begins this week when Parliament returns here in Canberra.
This moment of disagreement does not define us, and it will not divide us.
We will carry on and we will move forward and we will thrive.
The referendum defeated, tonight there seems little appetite to do it again anytime soon. Charles Croucher, 9 News.
There, our next question.